today's topic is growing resilient digital citizens and thinking about how we do that early in the elementary school at these young ages and how we do it at home so that it can build a great foundation for what goes on at school. My name is Lauren Davis. I am a former elementary school teacher and now I am the elementary technology integrator at ASD. This is my 5th year here. And I have a little 1-year-old at home, so I'm speaking from as a mom, but as a very young mom.
And I'm Heather Roy, and in my career I've had the opportunity to work in both elementary, middle, and high school. So I've been able to sort of watch the differences between how our kids use technology. I also happen to be a middle school and high school parent as well. Some of the things I'll be talking about today will be things that we tried at home. Some things work, some things don't. And these are also discussions that I've had kind of over the years with other parents who come to me with questions about support for their kids as well.
So just wanted to outline what the session would look like today. The big topic is digital resilience, and this is sort of a new term, and we're going to go into that and how that can be built at home. And then we want to introduce a concept called graduated privileges. And there's going to be kind of a threefold here with graduated privileges on how we use graduated privileges to manage devices at home with our children, how to navigate the online world, and then how to make decisions about social media when that comes up. And then just a few tips and resources before we close out. If you do have questions along the way, it is a small group, so you can raise your hand or we can hold them to the end and you and I can have a conversation after we're done. So just a quick way to focus us all in today on our topic and question that I want to pose to you. How can we approach social media and technology to both empower and equip our children to make responsible decisions? And the big thing here that we're all thinking is that it's a positive approach to technology, not a disciplinary approach, something positive and proactive. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I've got 3 questions I'm going to ask you, and since we're a small group, if you could just turn and talk to someone nearby, but take a few seconds to think on the question yourself before turning and talking, and then feel free to just chat amongst each other as well. So the first question, what are your biggest concerns about technology use at home? All right, so the next question to kind of look at, and you can continue your conversation too if you're on something. What sort of digital media does your child have access to on a daily or weekly basis? Thinking about, and when I say digital media, I'm talking about anything from TV, a tablet, phone, computer, laptop. So think about that in terms of what do they have access to at home. And then the last question, let's think of it in a positive light too. What are some benefits of your child using technology at home? How does it benefit your children? Okay, I appreciate you guys taking just a minute to get those things out, to think about and to reflect on them, because it gets us in the right mindset for what we're talking about today. And I understand that we all have legitimate concerns, but we also know the benefits of using technology, and we know that it's a way of life now. And it's figuring out the best way that we are handling it, mediating it with our children. So I want you to think about this metaphor here. This is a child riding a bicycle. As a parent, you are the training wheel. So think about the training wheels on a bicycle and how we start with a really small bike when they're young. And it's got lots of wheels, and it's got, sometimes a little safety belt, or is it home, and you've got the helmet on them. So we're giving them all of the tools that they need to be safe and successful. When kids learn how to ride a bike, we take them somewhere safe. We hold the back of the seat. We let them find their balance, and then you gently let go when they feel they're ready. And today, it's all about doing the same thing with devices. You are their training wheels as they learn how to use technology, as they learn how to be online. We want them to be able to find that balance and safety themselves. But we have to teach them, because they can't just get on a bike on day one and know what to do. That's a learning process that you get to guide. So we know that they learn by doing. And this is going to involve some risky play, but it's a lifelong process that they're going through. And mistakes will happen. Children need support from you to learn from those. But it's important to promote those kind of things in this controlled environment with you at home when they're young, getting them when you're there as their partner. Not just, okay, you're 14 years old now, let's jump on a bike and drive down E11. You know, it's a process that we get them to. So we have to use all of this thought process and keep this in mind to avoid, not completely avoid those risky experiences altogether, but to try to show that digital resilience just as they're getting little bits along the way, that controlled exposure.
And if they happen to fall off the bike, we don't freak out and lose our minds about it and scare them. What we do instead is we encourage them, we talk about where it went wrong, and we get back on the bike again. And so that's sort of what digital resilience is for our kids as well, is that understanding that mistakes might happen, but we're there to provide the supports to help them move forward and guide them.
And those conversations, when the problem happens, those conversations are what's important, that you're there and you're seeing what happens. So here's that word digital resilience, and this best encompasses what it is. It is the capability to learn how to recognize, manage, and recover from online risks, such as bullying or inappropriate content. And it has the potential to buffer how these experiences may impact their well-being. So it's just like we said, being those training wheels along the way, helping our children to recognize, manage, and recover. So we talk about building that, and that's kind of what the next few slides will be about, is some of these topics here. It's going to be a collective endeavor as you do this. Starting young is the most important. It might not be what you've heard in the past. It might be things wait until they're older. But really, we're saying it's starting them young with you together as partners in this. So you're creating that helpful environment from the get-go. You're talking to them, having those conversations with them. You're there, you're present. If they're using the device, you're right nearby. You talk about credibility sometimes. Oh, you see a picture of an octopus in a tree. Let's think, is that credible? Does that seem real to you? And knowing the difference of what they're seeing, is it real, is it believable? And teaching them that criticism of what they see and interact with online. But as Heather just said, if they fall off the bike, you're there. You're ready to support them if they make a mistake. And that's the most important part, is that they turn this into a learning experience.
And they know they feel safe talking to you if they feel uncomfortable, or they're confused, or they're not sure about something, that they know they can come to you and they won't lose all their privileges, or they won't lose their device. They know that they'll be able to have a trust conversation with you about what happened. They will be there to help guide them through that.
Okay, so first we're going to talk about managing individual devices, how that might look, how you can do that out.
So one thing that I like to talk about is the idea of graduated privileges. So when you first start out with giving your child a device, you don't just hand it to them with everything open, all permissions, every app under the sun. Same with the phone. What you do is that you provide them with a scaffolding, just like we're talking about with the bike, with padding and helmet and so on. When you provide the device, you're doing that within privileges. So at the beginning you start, you're sharing together all the time, and they're not doing anything by themselves when they're quite tiny. You're managing the time. You've got timers. You're making sure that it's very clear about how long and when and where they're able to go, and you've limited what their access is. Over time, you will provide opportunities for them to perhaps identify an app or game that they'd like to use, but you have a conversation with them about what it is and why do we have it. And you again manage time and access. As time continues on, again, the whole idea that they continue to be supervised. So for example, the device is always used in a public space, that you're always able to enter and exit the room and it's not a surprise that you're there, that you have constant conversations with them about what they're doing and how they're using their devices. And over time, it gets to the point where you can then allow them to have greater privileges, apps with greater access, and allowing them to then have the device on their own. But what was most important is along the way of those graduated privileges, they've listened to you and they've heard you talk about watching your time, thinking about what you're using, being critical about the apps that you're using, even understanding things like paying for apps paying inside of an app. Should you spend $3.99 to buy that set of 50 gems? Those are the kinds of conversations that you continue to have with them along the way before you say, here you go, you've got the device. All right, so that's what the idea of graduated privileges is. And so thinking about, for example, deciding whether or not you're going to purchase a phone, for example, is one of those really big things that we have to think about with graduated privileges. And so you need to think about, before you give that device to your child, is thinking about your child in general, because every kid is different. If they haven't asked you for a phone, you don't necessarily need to get them a phone. That's the best place really to start. If they have an interest in a phone, a great place to start is just the idea that I'm lending you my phone. I'm going to let you use it so you can make a phone call to me when you're finished swim practice. And that's where that permission starts. That idea that I'm going to start you out very basic, no apps on the phone, nothing. Slowly working your way up to being able to select certain things. And we'll talk about social media as well, but understanding that we've got the device and we've got the things that go on the device. So there's two different things that happen there. But before you even give the phone, you have to think about, do they need it, number one, and what's the purpose? And so going through those graduated privileges is a great way to start that. So slowly working the way up to having more content or access, but they don't necessarily need it right away. And deciding on those things of when is the right time for your child and moving along that is really, really important. And again, you'll know your child. I have two very different children. I have one child that to him not having access to his social media now that he's in high school would be death to him. I have another child who could care less. I have to remind him to bring his phone because I need him to call me after a practice. So it really just depends on your child, but you have to also make those decisions. Just because they say everybody has a phone doesn't mean they get it. Just because everybody has a phone doesn't mean you need to put every single social media app on it. It can be working their way up to having responsibility. And that's one thing that I think is really important, is that sometimes when we buy a device right away, we give them everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And something to think about, if you notice I underline the word phone, and this really could represent anything. Just because it's not a phone, if it's a tablet, an iPad, it's any other device. All of those questions come into play when you start considering whether or not you're going to buy this for your child. The reason we wanted to do this talk, we wanted to have it before Christmas, before parents start gifting beautiful technology devices to their children, to go through this thought process. Because essentially you're giving them a computer in their pocket. It's a big responsibility. The average age right now that kids are getting a smartphone is about age 10. It's 5th grade. And 75% of kids ages 12 to 17 have a smartphone. So it's there. We know it's there. So it's teaching them now that responsibility. So are they able to show a responsibility of other things in their bedroom? Do they take care of things that you've given them in the past? Maybe they need to be in touch for safety reasons, as what Heather was saying with swim practice. Sometimes there's social benefits, we get that. Are they able to use it kindly and responsibly if you've let them borrow your phone or your iPad? Have they taken good care of it or not? And in general, do they follow rules and respect limits? If not, they might not be ready for this responsibility. So there's lots of questions to ask yourself before you go through with that purchase, because they're going to show you if they're ready or not.
And we all know the answer too is everybody has one is not necessarily true. And so you need to make sure that you're judging based on what your child is ready for. That's what's really important.
Okay, so if you've decided, okay, I feel like they're ready, I feel like they're responsible, we're buying a phone, we're buying the iPad. The next step is teaching them how to actually navigate this online world, being on the internet. So we've broken it down into 3 things that we recommend doing or considering as you prepare your child for this. So the 3 things are going to be conversations, safety, and timing. So whatever age your child is, it's not too early or too late to start talking about what they do online and then why they do it. These regular conversations, even at breakfast, they might give you some insight and offer some help and make it easier for them to have that open line of communication with you about something that might upset them online, maybe something you saw on the news the day before. So what we kind of broke it down into was the younger ages and then the older ages. So things that you can talk about when your child is under the age of 5, activities they like, or maybe an app they like. They like playing Starfall. Maybe questions that they have about what they've seen. Oh, you saw something pop up on the screen that asked you to buy more gems. Okay, let's talk about that. Or what to do if they get upset about something they see. Oh, I didn't understand the game and I lost or something. Ages 6 to 10, of course, it's going to shift a bit. And maybe why they like certain apps, certain games, or other activities. Maybe some digital challenges, how to resolve them. In other words, like seeing inappropriate content or even just screen time use. And then just important questioning about what they see online to build that critical thinking. Oh, you saw that you could subscribe to something. Well, how did you handle that? Talking to them through those things. The next thing to consider is safety. There are great tools out there, ban filters, parental control settings on these apps and platforms, on the devices themselves that create a safer environment to let them explore online. So at the youngest age, we want to block adult content across all the devices that they could possibly use. If they're even going to have your phone for 5 minutes, just get it blocked. You can set screen time limits on the devices they use. And then think about how you're choosing those age-appropriate apps, checking the ratings before you download it.
Making sure that they don't have content or our ability to connect with other people outside of the app is one of the really important ones as well.
For sure.
It's making sure you're aware whether or not conversations can happen or whether the app is only used on the device itself.
And again, the graduated privileges. Okay, you get one app. Your iPad will have one app on it. This is what it will be. We're going to start with this one and see how it goes. And then they can work their way up. At the older ages, you can choose devices that are actually built for children that offer curated media and parental controls to manage what they see. Apple does a wonderful job at setting up great parental controls for you to set screen time limits and safety and all kinds of blocking and things. Those tech tools and apps like the Apple's Screen Time or the Apple Family Sharing are great. The Google Family Link to manage what apps that they use and when they can use them. All of those have the ability to be set, and it's going to be important, especially as they get older. Yes, you're there to have conversations and tell them, hey, this will shut off after 30 minutes. We have that conversation. You know that after 30 minutes it closes down. Not like you're trying to punish them, but helping them set healthy limits.
When they're selecting apps, my kids got really good about pitching what apps they wanted. And they had to be really good about explaining to me, Mom, this one's fine. It's we don't have to pay for this. I've double checked and I can't communicate with anybody else, or I can only communicate with friends. And the friends I'm going to use it with are, and so getting them to that point is really important because that is that showing of responsibility. So whereas they were quite small, it was like anything that was shiny or fun or good, they would ask. Then we would sit down together and go through and look at the app, and I'd say, listen, to do almost anything in this app, although it's free, look, you're going to have to pay for all of this stuff. And they'd be like, oh. Or we'd be like, listen, this one is going to allow you to talk to anybody on the web. That's not okay. And so having those decision-making conversations before they purchase or are allowed to add any app is really important.
Teaches them to be critical of what they're.
That's why the Apple, the parent account, the family account is really helpful, because kids can't put anything on their device without you approving it first. And so that almost builds in those conversations before you release the app to their device, and building up that understanding so that once they turn 16, 17, already in their head, they're thinking through, oh yeah, do I have to pay to play? Do I have to, you know? And they've already now built that because it's been built along as they go.
Right. It's a part of their mental checklist. Anyway. All right, and then the last piece of this is going to be timing. So we know about screen time, and being on the screen can be educational and entertaining, but it can also be a distraction from other activities. So it's about finding the right balance and establishing family agreements. When are we going to be using screens? Where can we use screens in our house? And how are we using them? And reviewing it as they grow. They're going to earn the right to be able to extend those a bit as they get older. But managing that at the young age, below age 5, is just encouraging that healthy mix. Just like how we do in the elementary school, it's a healthy mix. There might be 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, then we're going to go outside and play. Then we're going to cut and glue. We're going to have those educational hands-on activities balanced with the screen time. And then again, using those time-limiting tools, setting a timer at home, and giving them warnings. Hey, the timer's going to go off in 3 minutes, and then we're going to move on, and we're going to go on our bike ride, like we said we would do later. And that helps them also manage and see, ooh, time kind of flies when you're using a device, and you might not realize time's running out. At the older ages is encouraging them to explore a range of different type of media. And when I defined it at the beginning, digital media being TVs, iPads, video games, those sort of things. And then again, helping them balance active screen time, where they create or moving with screens, and then passive screen time, just streaming their favorite show, watching YouTube. So that active versus passive is also important for them to understand.
Understanding that difference between scrolling through a bunch of feeds versus building an animated video, creating code versus watching YouTube. So there were differences between what the use of the tech is really important as well. So we can't equate it all being the same thing. If they're watching tutorials to do sketching, that's different than just watching a bunch of mindless videos. So it's the what are they doing? And because you're always kind of checking in and seeing what's going on, you can help them with that balance as well. But also helping them understand as well, wanting them to mentally think in their own heads about how much time they've done it. So they learn to set the timers themselves. Like you'll have an agreement together, you'll say, how much time do you think we should do today? 30 minutes, okay? You set the timer for 30 minutes, please. So you are empowering them to be aware of their time limits. And the same thing as they get older, listen, you're doing your homework, take an hour break, set the timer for an hour so you know, then get back to homework again. And you're again helping them build those moments, because what even adults realize is you get sucked down a wormhole. You don't realize how much time you spent researching something, or you saw this and then you saw that and then you got into this and then you checked the feed on this and then you're over here and you realize how much time has gone. So helping them with timers is one way to help, again, build that digital resilience internally, rather than me saying to them, I'm shutting you down, or this shuts down immediately. Another agreement sometimes you'd have too is when is a good time to end. So if they're in the middle of something in what they're doing, again, not ending it immediately, but agreeing as soon as this is done, then we'll shut down. And so that helps again to help them decide when it's the time to end, but not in a way that it's penalties from you immediately right away. So negotiating those things.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the third part, okay, we've talked about having a device. online, they're using the device. And then the third piece is social media.
Because we can have all kinds of apps on our devices that don't expose them to the outside world the same way that social media does. So we know that there are apps that are just games that happen on their computer. We know that they may just be watching YouTube, but then when we get into social media, we're opening up a whole other can of worms with their conduct and their behavior. So that's, again, where we think about that idea of graduated privileges. And so we have to think about what could my child have access to, when is the right time for them to have access to those things, and how can I decide when I should allow my child to have access to certain tools. Remember, we're building digital resilience. So we start small and we work our way up. And so we've put together sort of a little bit of a flow chart that we'd like to do. And if you've seen for elementary, I've put sort of a troubleshooting guide together, which we'll give you a link to later if you're interested. But this kind of summarizes that guide. And so understanding that before you say yes to any kind of social media as a parent, it's really important that you do your research first. They don't just get it because all of their friends have it. That's not the qualifier for getting anything. So what you need to do then is think about, first of all, is your child old enough to handle it? Is your child make good decisions? If you feel that maturity-wise that you're a little concerned about some of the decisions you make, maybe now is not the right time. Next is making sure that you look at some of the websites and resources for recommendations for parents. They may tell you right away that this app is not appropriate for children who are in elementary school or even high school. So making sure that you do that little bit of research first before you say yes. Next, make sure you actually go to the app itself and look at the recommendations and privacy settings that they have. Some of them are actually quite good about recommending, if a younger child is using it, how to set up their privacy. But again, keep in mind that a lot of these are 13 plus. So right away, you have to make that decision because you probably have a child who's not 13. And so if you're going to do that, you have to make sure that you are taking responsibility for the choices or what you're allowing your child to have access to. So make sure that you are aware of the privacy settings that need to be put in place. Some of them have teen options, some of them have guided parental options. So make sure you're aware of those. And then you need to think about, are you comfortable with the privacy settings? So you may be saying, yes, I'm fine with you having this, but I need to know who your friends are. Or you can only be friends with someone at school. You can't be friends with anybody else, and we'll check in every once in a while to see who your friends are. And then finally, it's a good idea that you may even want to download the app yourself. Test it out and see what you think of it. If you hate it, you can always take it off your phone and take it down. But it's good for you to take a look and see, wow, what's coming in, and decide whether or not that's not a good idea or not. The other option is that you can sign up for the account and share it with your child and use it together to start so they get a feel. So we're only friends with grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles, and we post together the things that go on there, and so they learn how to do that kind of thing. But again, those conversations have to happen all the way through here. It's so important. Again, to understand why is it you want it. And again, if it's just because all my friends have it, that's not the right answer. And so helping them make decisions along the way and picking, I would recommend one app at a time. So you can say to them, I really want this one. You go, okay, let's go through together. Let's do this together. And so that you're always monitoring. So if you do finally say yes, as parents, we ask you, please continue to supervise them closely. Helping to make sure that they're making good decisions, helping to make sure that what's coming to them, that they know they can come to you if people are publishing things that make them upset or uncomfortable, they know they can trust you and come to you and talk about it. You won't lose your mind. In your head, you might be losing your mind, but being calm and open to conversations and then supporting them along the way. So if the school needs to be aware about some behavior of some other students, you can gently follow up with that. Or if you need to just have a conversation with your child. And if it's not working out, it's okay to delete the app. But what's really important is that sometimes parents think that giving a phone is the only way kids have access to social media. And that's not true, because if they have an iPad or a laptop, they have access as well. So it's really important that they're not hiding it from you and that they have conversations from you and you're constantly involved. And again, that's how we build that resilience, because if you've they learn how to ask themselves questions in their head as they go along. When you're no longer there to be watching and supporting, they're still going to be going through that problem solving and judgment in their head about how to make those good decisions. And that's what we really want to have happen for our kids.
Building those habits.
Building those habits. So I do have an app. This QR code will actually give you a document that you're using for elementary families about deciding. Now, I know most of you have middle school kids now, right? Yeah. So they've already maybe made some decisions along the way, but definitely for elementary parents. So you can scan that with your phone, or we'll have a link for you as well. But if you'd like to have access to that, I'll give you just a second if you'd like to download that for reading later. Great. So again, it's that idea of graduated privileges. We might get an app together, or social media, we might open an account together. We learn along the way, we have conversations, we have discussions. One thing I love to do too is if I see things in the newspaper or if I read things online about a mistake that somebody's made, I'll bring it, oftentimes it's a humorous mistake, but I still like to bring it to the dinner table and have conversations about, where did this person go wrong? And having those kind of conversations keep bringing that decision making to the kids as they're starting to use their apps and devices as well. Of course, they grumble because they're like, Mom, it's your job. But it's also important that they have those conversations all the time. And so we do they'll bring, so-and-so did this, and we again talk through what's next steps, what should we do. And again, because we're in the UAE, it's really important too that they understand what the rules and guidelines are, and we try and bring that here at the school as well. But having those conversations too at home is really important. When you see something that someone has posted and you're like, that probably wasn't a great decision for the UAE, and we talk about why that wasn't a great decision. So that eventually when they're on their own, again, like we said, we've guided them, we've given them helmets, we've given them padding, we've held the bike, so that in the end, we can let go and allow them to make some good decisions because we've placed that thinking in their heads.
Your responsibility decreases, their responsibility increases, and that's that end goal. So 3 takeaways that I hope that you can use to sum up our talk today. The modeling. The modeling is where we are setting the standard. Kids are pretty good experts at sniffing out and calling out their parents and modeling the behavior that you want to see from them is going to be that first priority. They're watching you. My 1-year-old is watching me. She wants the remote control and the phone at home. And that's what she's most interested in. She knows the remote that doesn't work. They're watching. So modeling those behaviors with your kids is where it starts. And then the focusing on solutions. If you are ready to take steps, if they are making a mistake, you're there to step in. And you're going to work toward letting them make those choices, those graduated privileges, so that they can choose on their own as they show you that they're ready to. If you're setting solid standards but you don't like what your child's doing, you're monitoring their media use. And that can be the next step. You might have device-free zones in your house or times. So limits, not lectures. Communicate, don't corner. You've got to be thinking through what you're going to do to increase the responsibility, but also you're there to step in if needed. And then last, establishing those routines, setting the timers, the time limits, the device-free zones, and then you're up front. Hey, I'm going to come and check in on you. I see that you're working on this, and in 15 minutes, let's check in. Let's see if you're wrapped up and done. We don't want them, we want to teach our kids that we're making those positive choices when they're on their own, that you trust that they're going to make positive choices. And then you'll step back and mediate rather than jumping in every time that there's an issue. Oh, okay, something came up. Let's have a conversation about it. And that's as they work their way up through the graduated performance. I know we're not telling you anything you don't already know. It's just sometimes the application of it and making it happen. Okay, so a few tips and resources before we close out. A lot of this information today was from commonsense.org. They've got great guides in there. If you're looking for something about how to start TikTok with your child, they're going to walk you through
It's a very good app-specific guide.
Very app-specific, even media use. If you want to look up a certain app or a certain TV show, it's going to tell you whether or not your child it's appropriate for your child's age.
So as you're making your decision-making, you've got some help to decide as you're deciding whether or not. And while you're doing your research, it's a great place to go.
Again, we've got the social media guide, and we will include the yes or no graphic, the flow chart to help you. That will be also included on that guide. And we'll have Jean send that out as principal's letter this week as well. And then just wanted to include the graduated privileges one more time, thinking about that in your head anytime you're making those decisions for your child. Technology's here to stay. We know that. So it's a life skill. It's not something that we grew up with learning how to manage, but we're trying to teach that to the next generation. Learning how to responsibly use it, safely use it. So now that we have done this, think about some goals or things that you'll be taking home with you. If there was one tip that stood out to you, or something new that you could try, or a new way to phrase it with your child who might be a bit stubborn, think about one takeaway that you might have for today that you could implement once you're home. You don't have to share that, it's just some time to think. I appreciate you coming today. I appreciate your attention. We know this is an important topic, but we also know it's a very busy week. And I appreciate you just coming and showing up for your child and for how to use that as responsible use of technology with them. And we'll see how things go and how this Christmas season goes with purchasing things. But hopefully this would be just something good to have in the back of your mind that you can take away with you and building that digital resilience. It's a partnership. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.